Hi, this is Graphically Alex coming at you with all things fat related. If that's something that interests you, please subscribe. I'd love to have you. And today we are going to be reacting to a new fat acceptance podcast, which I'm excited. I feel like they're kind of coming back into vogue, and I feel like I enjoy the deep dives on this channel. I feel like I'm the one that will cover everything because I'm insane. So, because I feel totally insane. I'm just kidding. I'm not going to break out into a Livy moment. But I will say, I am going to break out into a Livy moment because I feel like, for my Livies, I feel like everybody is like 4 of the songs as far as like your loving style, your lover style is like 4 songs on the album. And I will tell you mine, and I want you to tell me yours because I'm obsessed with the album right now. But my 4 songs that describe my loving style or my like lover style would be Stupid Song, You Plus Me Equals Heart, Maggots for Brains, and come on, I feel like you guys know the last one. Those of you guys who are on the album and know it, you know I have to say My Way. You know it. But anyways, I want to know what your guys' are. And yeah, so as a part of my stupid song moment, I'm holding back all the girlies, like she does in the video. I'm holding back the girlies from the TR/EFA by the letter D logic. So I like to do it, and I like to go deep and be just all up obsessive and cover everything. So we're going to cover them. So I did see that Robin did cover them. I didn't watch Robin because I'm not letting Robin ruin my first reaction. So I wasn't going to watch yet, so I didn't. So I just had to say that. But no, but I'm going to go ahead and react to it now. So I'm going in blind. I got nothing. I'm going to go. Let's go. Let's do it.
I had a very bad headache that day, and I hadn't been able to eat anything. Ordinarily, I know you wouldn't think that was such a hardship for me, but my blood sugar level dropped or something, and I just sort of tipped over, and I spent about 4 days in the hospital. And please, I mean, I got so many nice cards.
Welcome to Fatspo,
a podcast where we unpack fat phobia and discuss fat icons.
I'm your host, Jessica Blair.
And I'm also your host, Cat Lion.
Before we begin, I do want to give a content warning for discussions of fat phobia, eating... Today's episode is about Cass Elliot.
You guys are probably like, what the fuck?
Elliot died almost 52 years ago, yet her legacy is still clouded by anti-fatness. Another thing that unfortunately still persists is the lie that she died by choking on a ham sandwich. But first, we have an elephant in the room, don't we? Or perhaps
we sure do. A little much, a little heavy-handed. This is a segment known as Elephant in the Room, known as it from now on, where we myth-bust claims from the internet about health and weight that we might have been hearing since we were little tiny kids.
And what's today's elephant in the room?
We're going to talk about prediabetes.
Dun dun dun.
To talk about prediabetes, we have to talk about insulin.
What is insulin?
Well, Jess, thank you for asking. Insulin is a hormone that turns food into energy, and it helps you manage your blood sugar. How exciting. Yum, yum.
Insulin helps you store the energy or helps you utilize the energy. I don't think it turns it into energy. It helps it go into cells. So it helps like sugar go from the blood into your cells, basically. And like muscles and things like that.
So we all know
and other
that
nutrients too.
2 different types of diabetes. Type 1 diabetes. Jess?
Yes. Type 1, type 2.
Type 1 diabetes is where your immune system attacks and destroys your insulin-producing cells, and therefore you can no longer produce insulin. And so if you have type 1 diabetes, you typically will do daily insulin therapy. How exciting. Type 2 diabetes is a lot more stigmatized, and it actually makes up 90% of diabetes cases. And basically what happens in type 2 diabetes is the body becomes resistant to insulin or doesn't make enough, and that causes glucose to build up in blood, which makes you fat and makes you less of a person. Sorry. We can
I
cut
mean, it
that out.
reminds me of when I was a kid and I found out.
It's a lot more influenced by lifestyle factors, particularly inactivity, which is a major one that people don't ever talk about. But also things like stress, also things like overeating, also things like the damn seed oil consumption, having that with the carbs at the same time. So especially in fried foods, it's a no-no for blood sugar. It's very bad to combine those. So especially in large quantities. So there's definitely lifestyle factors. Having tons of sugar with zero activity, it's a choice. I'll put it to you that way. It's not the best. Where's the sugar going to go? What is your body going to do with the sugar? Having tons of excess calories, where's it going to go? That's why there's quote unquote stigma. It's not necessarily stigma, it's just that it requires treatment, management, prevention, and all that stuff. So, and it can be reversed in some cases too.
Out that Nick Jonas had diabetes and it was treated as this like it was considered this like end all be all thing, and I still see content creators who have diabetes talk about it because it's so stigmatized.
Like if your adrenaline's really high all the time, it does complicate your blood sugar, for the record. So it is stress related too.
Even when you're not fat, it's very stigmatized.
Yeah. My friend diagnosed her brother with diabetes from reading the Jonas Brothers book.
Diagnosed by Jonas Brothers.
Exactly. But what's the representation for type 2 diabetes? My grandpa.
Is that Big Joe?
No, he's dead. It's the one
Well,
that is alive and like really sucks. Told me that I would get diabetes from, or that because I have diabetes, I shouldn't eat popcorn when I was like 12.
okay.
Okay.
Okay, Grandpa, wrap it up.
Anyways, so the main thing that people don't understand about diabetes, both type 1 and type 2, is they are genetic. You can't eat your way.
So there can be a genetic component, but your outcomes are greatly influenced by how you treat it, what you do about it, and something like body size is definitely a part of it. It actually puts more responsibility on you to weight normalize if you are diabetic or predisposed to diabetes.
Into having diabetes.
That's something that I've seen a lot, especially on TikTok right now. I think I told you about this, but I saw this video of this girl who was talking about matcha lattes and how she got prediabetes from drinking so many matcha lattes. And the entire comment section was just people demonizing oat milk, talking about how it was probably the sugar in the matcha lattes, and it was just such a jarring video to see.
It's likely not one food. It's likely a whole picture thing that contributes to it.
And it was basically her being like, don't drink matcha lattes, you'll get pre-diabetes. And it's just fear
Yeah.
mongering, I think.
I think the really outstanding thing about eating disorders.
It's not fear mongering. Oh, I'm glad I cut her off. That was a good cutoff, huh? It's not really fear mongering. It's just speaking fact. So where is the energy going? So a lot of people think about diabetes as, again, there's an inevitability to it. There's nothing you can do about it. There's a futility attitude. But it's often, it has to do with keeping things moving. So you want things to move, okay? And again, I am a fan of GLP-1s for diabetes because they tend to help in other areas too. Like they can help with other contributing factors that we don't really need to get into, but you get what I'm saying. Helps with things like obesity. It can help appetite regulation, that kind of stuff, because diabetes will make you hungrier and more tired as well. But the point is, it's not fear mongering. It's just, it's logical. Where is the sugar going? What is the sugar being used for? What are you doing? Are you building muscle? Are you exercising? Do you have a physical job? Because if you have all these excess calories and it's just sitting there, it's kind of like, I understand them saying it's fear-mongering to blame sugar. I would say it's not great to just demonize like a macronutrient, in my opinion. But it is something to consider. How well does your body tolerate it? What are your life circumstances? You know, to me, blaming sugar is like blaming fat for having a fatty liver. It's not exactly the truth. You know, there's a whole picture. That has a lot to do with an excess of calories, which I can't even say it. So excess of calories, inactivity, and then there's other factors too, like stress, that kind of stuff. You can have a genetic predisposition. But again, if you have a genetic predisposition, then you should be even more careful and even more strict. So you need to work on lifestyle factors, bringing stress down. That also helps with high blood pressure as well, which people don't talk about that. They're just like, pop a pill. It's like, no, maybe your life is a little too stressful. You know, you need to figure it out. But you have to like not be super morbidly obese. That is stressful in and of itself. That is physically taxing on the body. It is very stressful on a physical, daily, 24/7 level. You have to not be in what I call the toxic ritualistic, which is E followed by the letter D, which I'm glad I cut her off because YouTube doesn't want you to talk about it. Having those types of behaviors and lifestyle, that type of mental health issue will definitely be stressful to you. It's stressful to you psychologically and physically. So you're not setting yourself up for success in either preventing, mitigating, or in some cases even reversing type 2 diabetes by just diving into obesity head first and binges. It's not really good for you. It doesn't matter what you're bingoing on, that's what I call it. It's bad for you. Bingoing is bad, period. There's no good nutrient that's good to bingo on. It's always bad. It's always bad for you. Oops. Let me unmute her.
If you examine any food close enough, you can find something wrong with it. And that's like, I know people that are afraid of carrots. Yeah, if your body is not able to process insulin, it doesn't matter if you eat, vegan or just whatever you think is healthier. Your body can't process insulin.
Yeah, and that's like people who demonize fruit because of the sugar in fruit. It's fruit, honey. That's why one of my favorite creators on TikTok, I can't remember their username, but they're a food scientist, and they just always respond to videos like that and are like, hey.
I don't think that fruit is making people diabetic. I think it's it's a lot of other stuff. So I already mentioned it. It's a lot of your fried foods. It's a lot of the starches, especially combined with inactivity. So it's a lot of sedentary lifestyles. That's really bad. So like if you're having like tons of pasta every day and you're not moving at all, that's really diabetes friendly. I'll put it to you that way. If you're just taking stuff in all the time and you're just like, I have to be careful with how I talk about it, but you're just way overdoing it in terms of calories, that's going to cause insulin resistance too, because it releases a ton of insulin when you're like way overdoing it all the time consistently. Bingo will release a ton of insulin. So I think people, they sometimes lose the forest for the trees when it comes to this stuff. It's like, why don't we look at your lifestyle in general? Like, are you constantly bingoing? Are you drinking a lot too? Like, that's not really great. Like it's stressful to the body and all that stuff. I told you, stress is related. So you have to look at some of your lifestyle factors in terms of it too. It's a whole picture. It's holistic, which we don't tend to look at things holistically from a Western medical perspective. And I think that it's not that I'm anti-Western medicine. I'm not at all. But I just think that you need to look at the system as a whole. not just one piece all the time. I think you need a balanced perspective when you're looking at medicine. That's my opinion. Anyways, so I guess if somebody really wants to fight with me, they can, but that's my opinion, is that look at the holistic picture. What are you doing? Do you have an EFA by the letter D, where you are upsizing drastically all the time? That's going to be really bad for your insulin. Are you totally sedentary? That's going to be really bad for your insulin and make your diabetes risk go up. Are you super morbidly obese? That's going to be really bad, and it's going to have your insulin be higher. You get insulin resistance from being obese, period. It causes insulin resistance. The state of obesity causes it. So that means you need to get out of obesity. There's a lot of stuff there, though. You see how many layers there are? Do you have an extremely stressful lifestyle? Do you have an extremely stressful lifestyle? Are you in a horrific relationship, for example? That is very stressful to be in. You know, are you in a DV situation? It's kind of hard to be like totally cool if something like that is going down. Look at the whole picture. Do you have these glaring issues? Are you constantly eating fried foods and baked goods that mix those oils with sugar? It's not good. Are you constantly drinking? It's not good. You know what I'm saying? Have some logic. Look at the whole picture, because even if it cannot be completely prevented in your case, it still needs to be mitigated. So that means you have to be stricter than the average person, not less strict. That's a very DIS ordered mindset, to be like, well, I'm predisposed to this, so I shouldn't care at all. No, you're even stricter then. You see how that works? They don't want the genetic argument because it comes with more responsibility for them. They don't know what they're saying.
Here's why this isn't true.
Yeah.
And it's so important, it's so needed, because there's just no critical thoughts happening sometimes, a lot of the time.
Sugar and carbs bad, make fat worthless.
I almost said...
Yeah, and you guys ignore the contributing factor of obesity to diabetes and insulin resistance. So I don't know. You know, it's hard for me to take you seriously.
Yum, and then you went fat worthless. So not yum. Ew, yeah.
So basically, your likelihood to develop type 2 diabetes is increased by your genetics, yo-yo dieting, so weight cycling, and internalized weight stigma. I have spoken...
No. So it's a no on the last two for sure. What did she say the first one was? Hold on. Oh my gosh, my freaking mouse.
Your likelihood to develop type 2 diabetes is increased by your genetics,
Okay, so they're blaming genetics completely. Like I said, it makes it more strict. The yo-yo dieting,
so weight cycling, and internalized weight stigma.
No, bullshit. So it's going to be a huge hell no on the other two. Actually, I'm not a fan of yo-yo dieting at all. So let me be very clear. I think it's very harsh on the thyroid. So I will be very clear about that. But we're talking about different things here, right? So taking a breather from massively overdoing it and actually eating below maintenance, it can be helpful for insulin. Because when you're eating below maintenance, it lowers your insulin in general, and it lowers the need for insulin quite a bit. So it's actually better for diabetes if you take breaks, which is, I know that's bad to say, but because I'm not a fan of yo-yo dieting, but they're just totally wrong. So they're actually completely wrong. However, yo-yo dieting is really harsh on the thyroid. You can make yourself hypothyroid by doing that. So constantly weight cycling, it's really harsh on the thyroid. It's very like caustic, especially if you're having a lot of like, you know, very inflammatory foods, like a lot of seed oil consumption, or you're like bingoing on that type of stuff, like a lot of fast food, things like that are just kind of hostile to the thyroid health. Or if you're developing nutrient deficiencies because you're not really having a balanced diet. So it's like when you're on your on phase, then you're having just like, vegetables and water and, chicken breasts, and that's it. And then when you're on your off phase, you're just having a bunch of like fries and chips and donuts. You're going to develop a lot of nutrient deficiencies from that way of living because you're not covering all your bases ever. Like, for example, I talk a lot about iron on this channel because I became anemic in my downsizing journey. So I think it's really important to talk about. And it's also really hard to absorb iron if you are obese or super morbidly obese or any of that. It makes it harder to absorb. So you can become severely iron deficient by having that type of lifestyle too. So I'm not a fan of yo-yo dieting. I have to disclaim that, but they are wrong on the diabetes piece. They are wrong. That's actually wrong.
I have spoken about this with my nutritionist at length where...
And as far as the internalized weight stigma, that is really dumb. I would just say stress. So being super anxious all the time, that kind of stuff, it can be bad because it raises your adrenaline, cortisol, etc., which raises your blood sugar a lot. So that can happen even if you're not eating. That can happen. So you have to be aware of that too. So you need to cover your bases with your lifestyle, do the best you can, right? It's not about perfection, but you also have to develop coping strategies. And, I would suggest like grounding techniques, things like that, to lower your anxiety in general. And then also exposure therapies, developing resilience as much as you can. That kind of stuff is really helpful. All the things that they would advocate against. But regardless, they would all help because you need to kind of deal with anxiety anyways. But like I said, if you're in a horrific situation, you need to get out of that situation too. So we have to like think logically too.
If anybody has like a slightly elevated blood level for something, it is oftentimes a lot better to allow the people to not intervene at all than to have somebody afraid of certain foods, because that can cause a much harsher reaction, I guess, in the body. And
I think if you make it about appearance, that can be not helpful. I don't think that that's helpful, but I think letting somebody know of certain things that they should probably avoid or minimize because of certain health conditions they have. So keep it logical, right? So it's like, well, because you have this health condition, like for example, I was very hypothyroid when I was at my biggest. So I couldn't drink at all. Alcohol is super anti-thyroid, by the way. It's very estrogenic, and estrogen opposes thyroid hormone. So you need to be careful with that in general. But if you're hypothyroid, you cannot drink. You should not drink. If you have a fatty liver, you cannot drink. You should not drink. It's a no-go. And I mean nothing. Zero. Not tolerating the bullshit. So that's a no, you don't do that type of situation. But that's not telling someone like me that I, like when I was in that situation, telling somebody who's hypothyroid not to drink is not telling them that to be fearful. And it's not helpful. They shouldn't be drinking. So I think where it can be kind of stupid is when it becomes like really blanket statement. That can be kind of dumb. But no, it's helpful to let people know about certain conditions and stuff, for sure.
And your stress levels do impact your weight and your cortisol if that's something that you really...
Not your weight. That's a lie. But it can definitely impact your cortisol levels, and it can make you like burn muscle, for example. So even if you're in a cal def, you can lose a lot of muscle if you're super stressed all the time. Like it's not ideal, but no, it doesn't control your weight. It can make your appetite higher, but in some cases it makes people's appetites less too. So it depends on the person. And typically, in order for it to make your appetite higher, you have to already have insulin resistance. So that's typically the difference. So, yeah. No. That part is wrong. But the cortisol, yes, that's true.
You want to
Yeah.
be worried about.
Yeah. I mean, it's like with eating, like if you
I have
want
to edit that out.
a food and you keep telling yourself you can't have it and you keep trying to restrict, that just makes you want it more.
Not necessarily. You have to just think logically about it, and you have to de-emotionalize the experience. So I do think this can be true in terms of macronutrients. Like if you're demonizing carbs, or you're demonizing fat, or you're demonizing protein, stuff like that, that I think could be the case. But a specific food, no. Certainly not a specific brand, no. That's bullshit. Sorry. Get over it. Grow up. But you have to de-emotionalize it, and it needs to not be framed around anything other than like, I have a physical condition and I need to avoid this for this reason. So like, I didn't develop a complex about not drinking. I just didn't drink. You know what I'm saying? It's that kind of thing. It's just about being responsible. And if you have like tons of insulin resistance, you're super morbidly obese, you're hypothyroid, you have a fatty liver, you really shouldn't be having fast food drenched in oil and deep fried and all that stuff. You really just shouldn't be having that. And it's not, I don't think it's a controversial statement at all to say that, but it's like they act like it is, but you have all these health issues. And if you are predisposed to diabetes, I would just really, really minimize it a lot. Like hardly ever have it. Because it's, you just, you know, that's all. So you keep it grounded, or you keep perspective, and then you're fine.
And then you're going to eat so much of it versus just.
That's not inevitable though. It's always a choice. You're always choosing to do it. So we're not going to play that game either. I don't play that. I don't put up with the BS in terms of bingo. You're choosing to do it. Every bite is a choice. You're choosing it. Every single step is a choice. Everything is a choice. It's usually very premeditated too. It's usually extremely premeditated. So we're not going to play that game on this channel.
Just allowing yourself to have it in the first place, and then you'll be like, wow,
It's not helpful for everybody. It's not. I think it's good to get there, but you do need to understand where you're at, and I think you need to not be at risk of bingo, because you have to understand, like, you're using it as a coping mechanism. So it doesn't really matter what it is. It's the fact that you can and will do it. That's bad enough. So I understand certain people when they talk about they have certain trigger foods and things like that. I understand that. And I just think you don't have to keep it in the house. You know, that kind of thing. It's kind of simple. But eventually, like for me, like for Halloween, I love dots. I have been avoiding dyes this year though, so I'm kind of like over all that stuff in general, but I loved them. And so last year I had like a big trick-or-treat bag of it, and I was able to just count it and have like a little bit every day. And it was like a very strong, like, I'm really over bingo moment, you know. It was kind of like, but that was a lot of years into recovery, and, you know, so you have to know where you're at with that. The goal is to get there, though. I will say that. The goal would be to get there eventually. Like, especially from that mental perspective, because you should be able to do that, and you can get there, but it can take years. So let's be realistic too.
I had this and it was tasty, and now I'm full.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you try not to think about something, that's all you can think about. Unless you have super...
That's not true. So oftentimes you just have to coach your brain. So you just say things repetitively. So I talk about this a lot in terms of the mirror. So part of the TR, or E followed by the letter D, and BINGE as well, which people don't always know this, is you stare in the mirror all the time. So I tell people, and I'm going to tell you now, what you do is you say, like, I don't do that anymore. So it's like, if you take a quick peek, you look at it, you don't do like this whole episode with it. And then there shouldn't be any real emotion. You should strive to have basically no emotion about it, because realistically, you're not changing that much one day to the next. So if you have this shocked reaction, it's fake. It's a very fake thing. They're fake feelings. So you have to like ignore that because it's not real. And then you just are like, okay. And then if you start to go there, then you say, I don't do that anymore. No, I don't obsess about how I look anymore. I don't do it anymore. That's who I was. I had that time, but I don't do it anymore. You see? So you have to frame it, and then you just say that to yourself over and over again, basically. And you just do it very repetitively, which if you're dealing with the TR, you're already repetitive anyways in your brain, so you can just repetitively say that over and over. I don't do that anymore. 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 And the mirror is like a very big trigger for people. So once that's gone, it's like you cut your triggers basically in half. It's pretty wild. So, and that you have complete control over because you're the one doing that. So it's that kind of thing. So I'm just saying, it's not like she's wrong. I think it comes down to a lot of like, you're trying to distract yourself from things in your life, or you might feel numb at times or bored. And you have to deal with feeling numb and bored in recovery. It's a part of TR recovery. It's a part of EFA by the letter D recovery.
Powers, which is cool.
And we support that.
And we support that. The treatment for type 2 diabetes, medication, hydration, talking to you, Elise, supplements, combining protein or fat with carbs to avoid blood sugar spikes.
I personally don't know a lot about diabetes except from what you just told me. Even though people love to tell me I have it, which according to my doctor, I don't.
You really should know more.
It's just like how people always assume just because you're fat, you're unhealthy, and if you're thin.
You are. So if you're obese, for example, you're already having so many hormonal downregulations, your dopamine's lower in your brain, you're already dealing with higher estrogen levels, you're dealing with a step down the hypo pipeline. So you're getting closer to hypothyroidism. You're likely moodier than you would be. You're likely less motivated than you would be if you weren't obese, which can have ripple effects. So it can affect your career. It can affect other aspects of your life. And if you have something like ADHD, it makes it worse. Just being class 1 obese, it makes it worse. So no, it's already affecting you. It just gets worse and worse. The longer you are at that size and the bigger you are, make a difference. But it's bad. And it does tend to affect men quicker. So it affects women a bit slower. But it's not like it's not happening to you. It still is. So.
Then you're healthy. When it turns out you actually can't tell someone's health by their weight. And just because somebody may look more aesthetically pleasing to you doesn't mean that they're healthier than the next person that walks along.
Yeah.
So we're not in competition of who's healthier than who. I think that framing it in that way is very DIS ordered, and it's bizarre. And it's not a line of thought that I think should be normalized or even really considered. We're talking about people as individuals. So we're talking about you specifically. We're not talking about if you're healthier or less healthy than a thin person. It's irrelevant. Their health levels don't affect yours. So it's very DIS ordered when they do that. It's the constant comparison and competition aspect of the TR.
That also really makes me think of, I forget the statistic, but a large percentage of people think that fat people just eat more food.
They do. They definitely do.
Is just simply not true.
It is true.
I was actually thinking about a TikTok that I made.
So this is very DIS ordered. Denying caloric realism, denying it, acting like people just upsize for no reason. It's not true. So even certain medical conditions, they increase your appetite so you consume more. Or maybe you have certain conditions that make activity more difficult. So then you're burning less. And then, of course, your height and sex and all that stuff does contribute to your age too, although your age is not the most drastic until you're like in your 60s. That's kind of overblown too. But age does play a factor for sure. Like if you're not growing anymore, then you don't need as much, right? So if you're not like a teenager anymore, it's different. So you have to think about all those things, but come on, you guys. Come on.
Years ago, where I was just basically saying that like you can be naturally thin because of your DNA. So why can't you just be naturally fat because your DNA? Like nobody understands that maybe if you need to restrict yourself and starve yourself in order to be a certain weight, that your body is just simply not supposed to be that
If
weight.
you need to gorge yourself
And then
to be a
also-
certain weight, then maybe you're not supposed to be that weight. If you have to massively overdo it all the time, then maybe you're not supposed to be that weight. If you have to bingo, then maybe you're not supposed to be that weight. If you have to stay completely sedentary, then maybe you're not supposed to be that weight. Those are all DIS ordered things too. If you have to constantly justify it all the time, then maybe you're not supposed to be that weight and you know it. Now, I don't think that people that overeat necessarily have the TR, but people who lie about it, it certainly is. So.
Just acting like fat people have not always existed. We have.
Yes, but usually you had to have wealth too, because a lot of people were really thin because they couldn't afford it.
We will.
My partner works in costuming and is a very big advocate for, just loves to remind people of survivor's bias, which in vintage clothing, there's not as much plus sizes. You know why? Because you can take a plus size dress and turn it into multiple garments for straight size people. Mm-hmm. And so if you're able to make more garments, then it's going to be used, and the leftover clothes that we have to look at historically are going to be straight size.
Delusional.
Mm-hmm. And it doesn't mean
beyond delusional. Pretty wild, actually.
That fat people didn't exist.
And also, I'm sure that fat people, when you were hand making clothes,
when they are talking about fat people of the past, they were nowhere near as big as what they're talking about.
Clothes had less clothes because it took more fabric, and then they were wearing those clothes over and over again until they basically disintegrated over time.
They are pretty bad. Whew, man. Wild. The cope runs deep.
So it's not just like, somebody who would have been royalty or richer who would have had clothes sitting somewhere that could be preserved. There were people that were wearing it every day.
Yeah. And talking about.
This is so dumb. Also, when we're talking about historical, we're talking about like on a population basis. We're not talking about individuals. I'm sure there was somebody who was like the wife of a baker who was a little chunkalicious back in the day because she had access to more food. But being chunkalicious versus being huge, it's a big difference. It's a huge difference. So let's just stop. This is very cope.
Clothing preservation is always interesting as a fat person.
Talking about anything as a fat person.
Yeah.
DIS ordered.
Yeah. Well, speaking of, it's time to talk about Richard Kahn.
Who's Richard Kahn?
Well, this is a great question you're asking, and I'm going to answer it.
If you just said, who is Richard Kahn, and then we just go back and forth, because
it's like, well, he sounds like a bad boy. And he was. So, in 2001, Richard Kahn was asked by the head of PR at the American Diabetes Association to help persuade complacent doctors and the public to take a slight elevation in blood glucose more seriously because it might signal a heightened risk of type 2 diabetes.
I have a feeling I know where this is going.
Yep. Life before 2001 was low-key bliss, guys. And then what happened? Well, Kahn invited half a dozen diabetes thought leaders, nightmare blunt rotation, to brainstorm at the National Institute of Health's cafeteria in Bethesda, Maryland, where they decided the term prediabetes rocked.
And there you have it.
That was the birth of prediabetes. So after their little cafeteria romp, they immediately returned to the office, and diagnoses or like symptoms that had previously been described as impaired fasting glucose and impaired glucose tolerance were then changed to prediabetes.
So what was the outcome of Mr. Richard Kahn doing that?
Well, it became enshrined in the American Diabetes Association's standard of care, which is known as the Bible of Diabetes. And so basically, what this aimed to do was to have people take diabetes more seriously and to see elevated blood sugar levels as a warning sign, and to then maybe hopefully do some preventative measures so that they wouldn't reach the level of type 2 diabetes. And so, what this actually did was it took diabetes from being seen as medical to then kind of presenting, hey, there's this thing prediabetes, which happens before diabetes, and that means you have this time to prevent it. And if you don't, that is a failure on your part because you could have lost weight.
Gosh, this is wild, Cope. It's pretty wild.
But now you have diabetes.
Truthfully, before I realized that prediabetes wasn't as real as people think it is, I know like my
Wow.
partner's aunt had
My gosh, what the fuck? Ooh, this is like one of those moments where I'm like, I'm just gonna let them talk. Wow.
prediabetes, and then she was really into restricting her sugar and weight loss, which didn't really work because, as we've discussed, the more you restrict yourself, the more you want something.
Yeah.
And I've seen a
Not true.
large uptick in my mutuals on TikTok and Instagram discussing how they've gotten diagnosed with prediabetes, and that's why they're on GLP-1s or trying to lose weight. And I think it's just a really interesting way to like control people's bodies, not to sound like a conspiracy theorist, but
Well,
just
Wow. Yeah, they're pretty disordered. I would say they're both in it. I don't know how deep they are because I like to do my rankings like in terms of zombies. I think my first instinct is that the other one is a stalker, so level 2, and I think this one is the level 3, a clicker. So they are more severe.
yeah.
More
just
severe.
even
She's more mild. So yeah, that's what that's my instinct, but I don't know.
I will be truthful.
I'm just getting to know them right now. That's why I'm not like saying that, but that's pretty wild.
Was going to talk to my doctor about having a history with binge eating, and I was talking with my friend about it, and then I was scared because I was like, oh my god, what if she just prescribes me Ozempic?
I also, something really interesting that
Disorders are a mental illness. I have
yeah.
partaken in that mental illness,
Still are.
but it's
Yeah.
just generally not treated as seriously when fat people are the ones that have them, which will be
Yeah, including by you. Because you're still in it. Hardcore. Maybe not hardcore, but at least softcore.
very topical for today's episode.
I mean, it's always assumed that fat people have binge,
Yep.
They can have Mia too.
and it's like, okay, what if I was... Hey, guys.
You
Hey,
could
guys.
be.
Shout out to my divas out there.
You could be. So Mia doesn't have a size. Oh my gosh, I'm going to like kill this mouse. I just want you guys to know that.
In remission, though. Not about that life anymore.
No, you're not. Not at all. Probably just shifting over to bingo instead.
Need my hydration. This has been a part of growing up fat that I've had to kind of really come to terms with in a way is just understanding that at the end of the day, a lot of what was kind of done to me health-wise and weight-wise as a child was out of fear and out of wanting me to live a good life and to be healthy. And at the same time, I think it's important that to recognize that nobody has looked into the little brainstorm in the cafeteria in Bethesda.
Somebody should look into that.
Somebody should look into that, but actually, like, nobody is aware of what.
So they are so deep in it still. It's like when you're getting to this level of cope, you're having like this break with reality. You are so not recovered. Like, I'm just going to say that about both of them. Not at all. Not at all recovered. Not a single bit recovered. Nope. Zero.
What prediabetes actually is, especially when you go online and you see people talking about how they saw these really scary numbers and their doctor told them they had to go on a GLP-1. Well, we'll get into more about why prediabetes is actually even more problematic.
I didn't think that was possible.
Oh no, there's more.
Yay, I can't wait.
Go. The CDC and the ADA use something known as first step rhetoric to warn that prediabetes was the first step in severe long-term diabetes complications like amputations, blindness, and heart attacks. And this has long been regarded as scaremongering, and obviously it was not at all helpful to the general population. So that is just kind of a feel for the way they were waging war on prediabetes, aka scaring my mother specifically. Let's talk about it.
It's almost like any time, first of all, the US government wages a war, it's not a good thing. But second of all, just like a war on its own people, like the war on drugs and the war on fatness in the late 2000s, early 2010s. It's almost like giving kids a carton of milk isn't going to make them skinny.
It's the obsession with shame and the belief that shame, if you have enough shame, you'll change.
There is so little shame for obesity in the United States that it is laughable for you to be saying this. Like, I would literally, if I was in front of them, I would laugh in their face. Try again. I mean, the amount of delusional cope in this, it's to a level I have not seen in quite a while. They're pretty wild.
Yeah, and like the war on drugs, it almost turns out that just criminalizing drugs and locking up everybody with addiction issues and people who don't have addiction issues, because people who weren't even doing drugs were getting locked up. That doesn't work. That doesn't help people.
It gets worse.
Wow. Shocker.
But also, in a way, it's kind of good. The World Health Organization in Switzerland and other medical authorities abroad have rejected the term prediabetes as a diagnostic category because they are not convinced that it routinely leads to diabetes or that existing treatments do much good. I don't think this has been updated since Ozempic came out, so I think that is something to consider. I don't know how that is abroad, but I do know that at least within the past 10, 15, 20 years, prediabetes was looked at as, okay, that's elevated levels. You don't create a diagnosis for an elevated level of something unless it's...
You do realize you can have insulin resistance and not be diabetic. You do realize that insulin resistance is bad for you. Like, come on. Haha, this was funny, but we're done now, right? Can we end the bit? This is ridiculous.
Of actually being concerning. And so, is it concerning? Is it maybe a sign that you need to talk with your doctor? Whatever. Sure. And it is not widely accepted. The CDC followed the ADA's lead because they set the primary standards of care in the U.S.
Okay, I need to stop. I'm getting mad. And I'm hungry. So I'm actually hungry. So I'm going to stop now. But, yeah, we will do this whole thing. So, I mean, it's starting out pretty wild. I'll put it to you that way. So I will get back to you guys soon. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I will see you next week. Bye-bye.